everybody. Friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me just start with a confession that these days, when I speak at any meeting, I don't feel like I'm the one who can inspire anymore. I actually feel extremely scared. Why? I'll tell you a story why. I was speaking to a group of leaders in the United States, and at the end of my speech, where I was talking about the inequality crisis, the poverty crisis, the gender inequality crisis, the climate crisis, and at the end of it, a person put up their hand in the question and answer time and said, "Dr. Naidoo, have you heard of Martin Luther King?" And I said, "Yes, of course, he inspired me and many people in my country when we were fighting apartheid." And then the person asked me, "Do you know what his most famous speech was called?" And I said, anybody knows?
I have a dream.
Okay, I have a dream, okay. So, I'm thinking it's a trick question. I very slowly say, I have a dream. And the person shouted back at me, she said, "Yes, it was I have a dream, but when I hear you speak, it sounds like you have a nightmare. The forests are collapsing, the oceans are collapsing, everything is collapsing." So let me start with that to make my first serious point. The challenge that we face today is how do we speak the truth about how serious the challenges that humanity faces on the one hand, but how do we do it in a way that does not demobilize, demotivate, frustrate, and make people feel, well, what's the point about getting involved and doing anything? And the stories we've just heard, is such a powerful statement about the power of people who refuse to accept that the world that we live in today is the best that humanity can create for itself. And it's these kinds of stories that we are seeing not only in Africa, but in every part of the world. Young people are taking the lead in showing the way about how we can do things differently. Now, people of my generation, we love to say, young people are the leaders of tomorrow. How many of you have heard this phrase? Young people are the leaders of tomorrow. Let me say to you, your responsibility for those of you who are 30 and younger, or even 35 and younger, is to refuse to accept that young people are the leaders of tomorrow. Because if you wait for tomorrow, there might be no leadership to exercise. You have to step forward now and take leadership with new ideas, with new thinking, and saying to the current generation of people like myself, folks, you're messed up, and you're messed up badly. So, I hope it works. I want to share with you a video from Martin Luther King speaking in 1965, which I hope will destabilize and disrupt your thinking, whether you're younger or whether you're older like me. Oops, sorry, it didn't work. Can the IT people try and do something? But the good news is I know the quotation by heart, so I can say it if the... much better. Sound?
It's more than any other word in psychology. It is the word maladjusted. It is the ringing cry of modern child psychology, maladjusted. Now, of course, we all want to live a well-adjusted life in order to avoid neurotic and schizophrenic personalities. But as I move toward my conclusion, I would like to say to you today, in a very honest manner, that there are some things in our society and some things in our world for which I'm proud to be maladjusted. And I call upon all men of goodwill to be maladjusted to these things until the good society is realized. I must honestly say to you that I never intend to adjust myself to racial segregation and discrimination. I never intend to adjust myself to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, leave millions of God's children smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society.
So let me repeat that last bit for you, right? We should refuse to adjust to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, when millions of God's children are smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in an affluent society. You were speaking about the United States in the 60s. That slogan today is 1,000 times more applicable in the United States, and it's totally applicable across the world. Now, many of you would have heard the slogan, people like myself say it, save the planet. How many of you have heard this slogan, save the planet? Please put up your hands. I have some good news for you today. The planet does not need saving. The planet is absolutely fine. Why do I say that? If we continue on the suicidal path that we are, by refusing to get off our addiction to oil, coal, gas, and other polluting things that take us faster and faster to climate catastrophe, what will be the end result? We warm up the planet to the point where our water sources get challenged, our soil gets destroyed, our temperature goes up to a point where we cannot survive or cannot even do agriculture. For us in Africa, we're a hot continent already. We have, and by the way, we are hot in more days than one. Music, culture, people, everything, as well as the weather. Okay? So, the end result, if we continue on the suicidal path that we are on, is that we will be gone as a species, the planet will still be here. Truth be said, once we get extinct as a species, the oceans will recover, the forests will grow back, and so on. So don't worry about the planet. Understand that this struggle is about whether humanity can fashion a new way to coexist with nature for centuries and centuries to come. Put differently, this struggle is about whether we have the courage to say that the children that will come and their children that will come, future generations, that we have a sense of sensitivity and concern for that which follows. Sadly, most of our political and business leaders in the world today, the vast majority, with exceptions, are governing as if we don't have children coming behind us. They are governing as if they are the last generations that will live on this planet. And, you know, if you take Donald Trump as an example, I'm sure Donald Trump's name must have come up on the boat at some point. If it didn't come up in the conversations, I'm sure some of you probably, when you were sleeping, had nightmares about him. But, you know, when Donald Trump says he wants to build a wall, you know, between Mexico and the United States, what we need to understand is that the world we live in right now, we critically do not need walls that divide. We need bridges that unite us, right? And we would say as Africans to Donald Trump and to all those that think in the same way, if you built a wall around Africa, the whole world would go out of business. You name it, we have it. And understand this. Africa is the richest continent on the planet, underneath the ground, in terms of resources. And precisely for that reason, we are one of the poorest continents above what in the academic discourse they call the resource curse. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever thought about what is the biggest disease humanity currently faces? Now, some of us might say it's HIV/AIDS, some of us might say malaria, depending which parts of the world we come from. Some of us may say influenza. I want to say to you a new disease, which I would argue is the biggest disease that we face. It's a disease we could call affluenza. So affluenza, okay, for those English not first language, let me just say, affluenza comes from the word affluent, wealthy. And today, there are far too many people in our world who have come to believe that happiness, one's sense of identity and so on, solely comes from more. Where affluenza is a pathological illness where enough is never enough. To see the stories of my brothers and sisters from different parts of Africa almost was choking me. Because I was thinking when every one of them or every other one of them said, I want to thank the British Council or whoever else had funded them, I want to hear us say, I want to thank the government of my country who set aside a youth innovation and entrepreneurship fund where we drew money from. Our leaders in developing countries, please don't clap because I only got like 20 minutes. So understand this. Our leaders are able to find money to fight wars. They can find money. In my country, my president found money from the taxpayers' money to build a 200 million rand rural mansion for himself, right? When they want to find money, they can find money. And not a single story that we heard, and I'm sure those of you who come from Europe and elsewhere, the work that you are doing is similar. And okay, fair enough, I should say that governments in Europe tend to be a little more supportive of the work that you are doing than us. But here's the tricky question. What is your responsibility as entrepreneurs? Is your responsibility mainly to look, find a gap and say, okay, there's so many disenabling features. It's not a very enabling environment, but I will try and figure out how to make it work. And you just put all your energies there and you just try and do the best. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. However, I want to say to you, you have two responsibilities in addition. The one responsibility you have is to be an advocate for that enabling environment that will make it easier for entrepreneurs like yourself, that when people like you step forward 5 years from now, they should not have the same hardships and difficulties that you had to get to where you are, right? So figure out what are the enabling environment, what legislative changes, what resourcing frameworks we need and so on. The second challenge is, let's stop for a moment and say that every story that we heard here today succeeds in their own countries. We are able to scale it up to Africa and maybe some of the projects even globally. And we have like 1,000% success of each of these activities. When you add it all up, does it help us to create the just, sustainable world that we need for future generations? Sadly, it doesn't add up yet. So we have a responsibility to also be asking the questions about the structural and systemic injustices that we have in the world. For example, we need the voices of entrepreneurs standing up against corruption, standing up against military expenditure, standing up against gender inequality, even if your entrepreneurship project is not specifically about gender, and many more things. Albert Einstein once said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get different results. Now, how many of you, just close your eyes for a second, please. Think about your lives. Think about all the things you've done. How many of you think that that definition meets your definition of your life? You see, there are many older people putting up their hands, and in good faith. In good faith, we play by the rules, right? We play by the rules. Government said, you know, come and lobby us, come and tell us what you want, contribute to this white paper and this green paper. And after a while, we realized that in fact, we were going through a ritual where government was ticking off some box that civil society consulted because the World Bank or some other institution told them that they needed to consult civil society. And after that, just went on as business as usual. So within this moment of history, we have to say to all of us that we are not winning and succeeding as fast as we are trying to, because the climate clock is ticking and we are 5 minutes to midnight. And therefore, whether you're the most well-performing NGO, whether you're the most strongest grassroots social movement, whatever, we all now must be willing to contest the way we do our work. Doesn't matter, and you're a well-known NGO that's been around for 50 years and did good things historically. What matters now is whether the rate of success is aligned to what the science is telling us about how fast we need to change to avert catastrophic climate change. So I thought I would quickly just drop my paper on the floor and then just bullet point quickly the moment of why I think that we must make sure that when we leave this boat camp, that we understand that we are living in a world that calls for urgent action, not just some nice projects or to do nice things that help some few people. We need structural and systemic changes that are aligned to what the science is telling us and what extreme weather events are telling us. Now on climate change, how many of you have heard this figure 1.5 or 2 degrees? Okay, don't feel shy, by the way. Don't feel shy if you don't know. But if you know, put up your hands and keep your hands up. 1.5, 2 degrees. Okay, keep your hands up, sorry. It won't pain too much. Good for your exercise. Now, for those of you who don't know, no reason to be ashamed, because one of the problems with climate change and finance, two of the most difficult things is those with power talk about it in precisely a way that we will be left in the dark. So when they talk about 1.5, they're saying that from the time we started burning carbon till now, we cannot afford more than a 1.5 degree or 2 degree rise. Okay? That's the figure. Now, sorry, put your hands up again, those who said you knew. For those of you who said you knew roughly what it was, how many of you know from when we started burning carbon till now, how much of warming we've already had? How many of you know what the level of warming towards either 1.5 or 2 degrees? How many of you know? Okay, what is it? What's the warming today, as we said, from 0 degrees when we started the Industrial Revolution to now? Does anybody know? 1? Okay, so people have said 1 correct, more or less correct. I'm sorry to tell you, it's just about 1.1 now. Okay, right? But you're right. Now, why do you hear 1.5 and 2 degrees? Because rich countries are pushing mainly, and some big developing countries are pushing for 2 degrees because they want more space to burn more carbon. But in July 2015, when I was in the Pacific, you know what slogan the people in the Pacific Island states was chanting in July 2015? 1.52, stay alive. 1.52, stay alive. That was in 2015, July. December, that same year, when they came to the Paris negotiations, that slogan had changed for the peace peoples of the Pacifics and some other indigenous peoples. The slogan changed to 1.5, we might survive, right? So, if you have 1.1 now, we've got 0.4 degrees to get to 1.5. And in the last 10 years, we've had more than 100% increase in extreme weather events. So to just say, with climate change, it's a game changer. It's a clock that's ticking. Say, addressing gender inequality, for example, it's pathetic that after so many years of activism, we are at the state of gender equality that we have. But there isn't a clock ticking against it. We still have time to get it right. But with climate change, we're losing infrastructure, we're losing land, we're losing soil, we're losing water, and so on. So we have to understand that this is a matter of maximum urgency. Deepening inequality between rich and poor is continuing at a frightening rate. We need to address that. We're also having growing xenophobia, sadly coming from the likes of some powerful politicians like Marine Le Pen and, sorry, not Marine Le Pen. Yeah. and Trump and others even on our continent, we see our governments talking civil society and democracy on the one hand, but shrinking democratic space for what citizen activists can do. But most importantly, I would say the problem we face is cognitive dissonance, where all the facts are there, those with power don't refuse to act with the urgency that the situation calls. I'm going to leave this presentation here, but in the interest of time, I want to just say to you that one of the questions you must interrogate for yourself is, how does change happen? Because if you look at this quick diagram here, so if you look at the left-hand column, macro, meso, micro, by which I mean focus of intervention, that governance changes, policy changes, or delivery of projects and programs. When you look at where most of the money goes, it goes to delivery of projects and programs. However, if we do not address the policy deficits as well as the governance deficits, then we will be accused of treating the symptom without treating the root cause of the problem. And I urge you to give some thought to this. It's in a book that I wrote in 2010 called Boiling Point: Can Citizen Action Change the World? The book is so crap, it's available free online, so you can just download it and you'll find this section. So let me conclude by saying with a story, but also I want to conclude with about opportunity. Unlikely places where innovation as well as opportunity comes from. So 4 years ago, 4 young girls from Nigeria, for their science project, they were between 13 and 14 years old, 13 and 14. For their science project, they designed a generator that could give you 5 hours of electricity run on 1 liter of urine. Okay, now urine might not translate in all languages easily, so let me just say maybe piss, basically, human piss. Okay? That project made it into the African Science and Technology Fair that year. Now, many of us know in many parts of the world, disposal of human waste is a challenge because of pollution, putting it in water supplies and so on. But this small solution could very quickly, if there was an incentive for money, because everything, I'm not saying that that's how it should be, I'm saying it would have went forward if somebody could make some money out of it, because we could have at least provided very quickly some basic electricity provision at a cost, and also not having the urine pollute in any way. Now, when I was, okay, leave urine for a side, okay? Let's just talk about feces now. So when I was, just before I started at Greenpeace, I was a visiting professor at Uppsala University in Sweden. And the day I arrived, the person coming to welcome me was late. Not by African standards, but by European standards. He came 30 minutes late and he was apologizing about being late, and I'm thinking, oh no, but you're early, I thought you're coming half an hour later. But the apology took about 30 minutes. And the apology went something like this. He said, oh no, I'm late because I serve on the Uppsala Bus Management Company, and as my volunteer thing. And I said, oh great, and what do you guys do there? And he says, no, we run the buses. And I said, what's the problem? And he said, no, we run our buses here in Uppsala on human shit. I never heard it was possible at that time. This was 2009. He said, we run it on human feces. And I said, oh, really? He says, yeah, no, we process them. And so I said, what's the problem? He said, no, we've run out of shit in our municipality. We're trying to negotiate with the neighboring municipality for their shit. They're carrying on as if their shit is better than our shit. They're going to charge us so much for it and so on. So I was quite overwhelmed by this story. So next day I went to the Uppsala Bus Management Central Bus Station, and I walked behind several buses, breathing as hard as I could to see if there was any after effects of using human feces. No problem. It actually smelled like perfume. So I am saying to African leaders at the moment, Because it's not only Uppsala, it's Bristol in England. And by the way, disposal of human feces is a huge problem in many parts of the global south. So I am saying to our leaders, if Bristol can do it, Uppsala can do it, other European cities can do it. I just spoke at the African meeting now in Benin, just before I came, with the heads of state and all. And I said, I refuse to accept that European shit is better than African shit. We have to just get our shit together and turn the crisis of climate change into an opportunity that can generate decent work and address the threat of climate change at the same time. So I want to say goodbye in two ways. One is to just tell you a small story about a personal story. When I was 22 years old, I was fleeing South Africa into exile. The story is sad, but it's intended to be inspirational, so focus on the inspirational side. So at 22, I was fleeing South Africa into exile, and my best friend at that time, a guy called Lenny, asked me, Kumi, what is the biggest contribution we can make to the cause of humanity? I said, that's a very simple question, giving our life. He said, you mean going, participating in a demonstration, getting shot and killed, and becoming a martyr? I said, I guess so, and that was happening in South Africa every weekend. Every weekend we were at funerals at that time, burying activists that were murdered by the apartheid regime. My friend Lenny says, no, it's wrong. It's not giving your life. It's giving the rest of your life. I was 22 years old that time. My friend Lenny was way ahead of us. In fact, he was the first environmentalist I met, and I have it on reasonable authority. At that moment, he was only one of like 5,000 voluntary vegetarians on the entire African continent. This guy was special, okay? So I shrugged, hugged him, and didn't think much of it. 2 years later, I get a call that my friend Lenny and 3 young women from my home city was brutally murdered by the apartheid regime. There were so many bullets in their bodies, their parents couldn't even recognize them at the mortuary. So I had to think deep and hard about this distinction between giving your life versus giving the rest of your life. All of us in this room today, dear brothers and sisters, are people who have been privileged to have acquired knowledge that our world needs fundamental improvement, that we need to work for greater justice and sustainability in the world. And we have a responsibility to carry that commitment till the rest of our lives or till those struggles have been won. Essentially, what Lenny was saying was that the struggle for justice is a marathon and not a sprint. That we need to have stamina, perseverance, and so on. So if you are anything like me, I'm sure there are days that you wake up and you think, oh my God, how am I going to deal with these problems? Because always there's huge things, and as if things were not bad enough, then Trump gets elected and every tweet from him somehow finds its way into our inbox and you're thinking, oh my God, what is this guy going to do to the world? So I want to say to you that when you hit those moments of doubt, of questioning whether your work makes a difference, whether your life makes a difference, I ask you to push back and tell yourself that this world would be a much more pessimistic place were it not for people like each and every one of you and the work you did. When I hear my brother from Addis, from Ethiopia, sells his house to start a life-saving project, how many people like that do we have in the world? We need to make sure that that story is a story that's told more and more, that more of us stand up and say, a Mercedes-Benz, BMW, or whatever other flashy car, or the massive houses and so on, does not make me human. Because in Africa we say, I am because you are. I am because you are. Basically is, if you didn't exist, I don't exist. A human being is a human being only through the interaction with other human beings. And unless we can put the poor at the center of our deliberations, I believe that the potential we have of making this world just, fair, and equitable, if we don't put the poor at the center at everything we do, we will betray the poor, but ultimately we will betray even those that are not poor. So now I want to call to my brother from Italy, the one who speaks Italian very well, better than the Italians. Is it you? Please, can you come up? Because you sang, you see, so I want you to join me in the song. And anybody else would like to come and help me with the song. So I want to end with a little song. It's very simple. It only has 2 words. Pambili, Africa, which means forward in Africa. But you get the tune. Now, how many of you know where your ancestors come from? Please raise your hands. Just shout it loud, please.
Africa.
You see this group here, you all have been brainwashed by these people on the boat. You are not answer already. Okay, so, of course, we all know that humanity started in Africa, so this song has just 2 words, forward with Africa, but if humanity started in Africa, then we are all Africans, whether one likes it or not. I'm sure you all like to be Africans. There are lots of people who don't like to be Africans, but so it has just these 2 words, Pambili, Africa. I thought that's how I should end, and I was inspired by you starting your speech with some song. So it goes like this, I sing it first, okay? Pambili, 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 Pambile i Africa. Pambile, 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 Pambile i Africa. Okay, everybody now. Pambile, 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 Pambile i Africa. Pambile, 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 Pambile i Africa. Thank you very much.